What's up, everybody? This is Discgolf01 with Black Chip Poker. Today we're going to talk a bit about pre-flop bet sizing adjustments and heads-up games. Most of this will apply to 6-max or 4-ring games as well. It's just a bit easier to discuss when you're just talking about one opponent. And so we'll just be looking at what types of opponents and what types of stack sizes will cause us to increase or decrease our pre-flop raise. And of course, this is when we're the button or the opener. Let's just start out talking about a normal situation where the effective stack size is 100 big blinds, or around there, and you don't really know your opponent. For most heads-up players, and for myself included, the standard opening bet is going to be to 3 times the big blind, and this is just a good bet. And then it charges your opponent a decent amount to play their hand, builds the pot while you have position, but it's also not so big that it discourages action, because you want to be playing hands when you have position. In general, as the stacks get shorter, so should your opening bet size. And when they drop down between 50 and 80, I'm usually raising to between 2 and 3 times the big blind, and anywhere below 50, usually min raising. Of course, there's exceptions, and if they're always calling and never 3-betting, you can continue to bet larger. When the stacks start to get deeper, I generally do not raise my pre-flop bet size to more than 3x, unless there are other variables come into play as well. This is because you're still charging your opponent to play, and you don't want to be discouraging action. Even more so when the stacks get deep, and a position is even more important the deeper the stacks are, and the deeper the stack to pot ratio is. So the larger you raise, the more you decrease the stack to pot ratio. But other factors come into play that could cause you to start raising the 4-5 times the big blind. We'll go over that a bit more. Other factors that should guide your bet sizing decisions, besides the stack sizes, are your opponent's calling frequencies, 3-betting frequencies, and post-flop play as well. But we're not really going to get into the post-flop play variables at this point, because that's a bit too much for a 5-minute video. So we're going to focus on pre-flop stuff. Basically, if somebody's calling you a high percentage of the time, you want your bets to be larger. If they're calling you a low percentage of the time, you want to bet smaller. The reason why you want to bet bigger if they're calling a lot is because you're just creating big pots where they're playing out of position, and they're not going to often have a strong hand. And if they're calling a ton, you can, and actually if they let you get away with betting larger and they continue to call, then you can just cut down on the percentage of hands you play. Just play stronger hands in position in a big pot, and you will be doing quite well. And when somebody's calling a lower percentage of the time, you want to lower your bet, because when they do call, they're going to have a stronger hand than you. Because if they're folding a lot, then you want to be raising almost every hand, and like min raising, or maybe more. Some of that depends on how often they're 3-betting. But you want to entice them to play some hands. If they're always folding out of position, it is sort of good for you, because you're always picking up the blinds, but you want to be playing some hands with position on them, and sometimes you can get them to start playing more hands if you bet smaller, and you risk less when they actually do show up with hands, and either 3-bet you or just play with a better hand than you. The more often villain is 3-betting you, the smaller you want your pre-flop raise to be, because you risk less with your crappy hands. When you have mediocre hands and they 3-bet you, you have the implied odds to call more often than you would when you're betting larger, and therefore their 3-bet size is larger, and therefore the stack to pot ratio is not right for you to call with drawing hands that that you would like to play. And also, when you're betting really small, like min raising, you can pretty much be doing it with near 100% of your hands, unless they just started 3-betting a huge amount of the time. and this tends to tilt opponents that are 3-betting a lot, because it sort of takes some of the heat off of their 3-bets, unless they're going to want to really overbet, and risk risk a decent amount. You're going to have a decent price, or be in an okay spot to call with a lot of hands. If they're rarely 3-betting, then you want to bet larger, for mostly reasons we already talked about under the calling. But building bigger pots in position, and you're not really ever in a bad spot when they're calling you out of position. Alright, this is our summary on reasons to bet bigger or smaller, and I guess I will just conclude saying that all these things just make probably just a tiny difference in each individual hand, but pre-flop decisions happen every hand, so they're pretty crucial, and they add up a lot quicker than river scenarios that come up very rarely. And also, all these things are pretty general guidelines, and like everything else in poker, they depend on a lot of other variables. But keep them in mind. Hopefully they'll help you at the tables, and I hope you got something from it. This is Discgolf01. Take care.